when I was a boy, I used to love puppets. Most children at a young age are infatuated with shows like Sesame Street and The Muppets. And nowadays, there seems to be a lot more entertainment designed for adults. Jeff Dunham made a career out of ventriloquism, and while he is one of the most notable, there are others. They've also been used on TV, appearing in more and more mature-themed shows. And of course, there is the dark side of puppetry. The old-style wooden puppets have made a definite impact in the horror genre. Small wooden dolls come to life in the movies and terrorize their owners. But like most things that fiction turns into phobias, there's really nothing to fear from puppets. They're just toys. Tools for entertainment. No. It's not the puppets themselves you should be afraid of. When I was a kid, something happened to me that changed my perception of the world and my beliefs on what's real and what's not. It was my 8th birthday, back in the early 2000s. Back then, my love of puppets was a bit more fanatic than most kids. I was getting older, and I was moving away from the little kid puppet shows and was moving more towards the kind of stories that tweens and young teenagers would enjoy. For my birthday, I told my parents that for the entertainment, I wanted a puppet show to perform for my friends and I. It was a bit over their budget, but they ultimately obliged, and so they hired a local theater company to come perform a show for my party. It was a funny little story about a cave troll who was misunderstood by the villagers that lived near him. It was a great show. My friends and I all loved it. The real highlight of the day was, of course, present time. I got a lot of things that I wanted. I got a Nintendo Game Boy Advance and a few games, some Transformers toys, and unfortunately, a few clothes. Which, like all children, I hated getting in lieu of something I actually wanted. But being trained by my parents, I sucked it up and said thank you, and acted like I liked them. A lie that encouraged people to buy me more clothes in the future. But the last gift I received made up for all of it. I had just unwrapped my last present and set it aside with the rest. I was ready for cake when my parents surprised me, bringing out a secret present that they had kept for me. They brought out a box decorated in shiny blue paper with a purple bow. Not expecting this, I leapt up in joyous surprise and took the present as it was handed to me. I quickly ripped off the paper, revealing a standard cardboard box. With the help of my father's pocket knife, the tape was cut, allowing me to open the box. I pulled out a plastic baggie to reveal my final gift. My very own puppet. It was one of those Melissa and Doug felt puppets. It was the standard boy puppet with black hair, a yellow shirt, and blue pants. The only thing that separated it from the usual standard was that instead of having somewhat realistic-looking flat eyes, it had 2 old-fashioned black button eyes. I didn't care, however. I hugged my parents, thanking them profusely, before I fully removed it from the plastic wrap and started playing with it. I stuck my hand up its backside and started bringing the character to life as best I could, which my younger cousins found particularly entertaining. It was late at night, and I was tired. I had expended all my energy at the party, and was ready for bed. I sat down in my bed, holding my new puppet, which I had named Jeremy, with me like a teddy bear. My mom came in and tucked me in. Being August in a more southern state of the U.S., she opened my window to let some air in. With my room being on the 2nd floor, it was perfectly safe. No night stalkers could climb up and abduct me. Not without a ladder, at least. But we lived in a good neighborhood, so it wasn't much of a concern. I fell asleep pretty quickly. I'm not sure how long I slept, but it felt like I had only gotten a few hours of sleep when I was awoken by something. I felt something brush my nose very lightly, but it was enough to wake me up, which is odd. I was not normally a light sleeper. My eyes opened, and I lifted my head up. Through my blurry eyes, I didn't notice anything wrong at first. But what I did notice was that my puppet was no longer in my grasp. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and looked over my bed, expecting to see Jeremy lying on the floor, but he wasn't there. Psst! I jolted my head to the direction that the very human noise came from. Looking towards my window, my eyes widened in surprise as I saw my puppet right outside the window. He was propped up as if someone was using him, but from the angle and with the windowsill being in the way, I couldn't see the arm holding him up. Even if there is one, that wouldn't make any sense, as there was nothing under my window except for a straight shot to the ground. Jeremy? I asked, not believing my eyes. The puppet put a hand up to its mouth and audibly shushed me before beckoning me closer with his hand. Thinking I had to be dreaming, I put my legs over the edge of the bed and stood up. I walked towards the window until I was within a few feet of the puppet. Jeremy, is that you? I asked. It sure is, Kevin, said the puppet in a goofy voice. It was excited but quiet enough not to wake my parents. I really enjoyed meeting you today. You seem to have a natural gift with us puppets. I know the two of us are going to be great friends. What are you doing out there by the window? I asked, confused. Why, I'm putting on a show for you, of course. A show for me? Of course. I am your puppet. I didn't know puppets were alive, I asked, perplexed. I thought they were just toys. Normally we are, explained Jeremy. But sometimes when there's a special connection between a kid and their puppet, we magically come to life. Really? I asked, amazed. Really, really. And once we come to life, we spend our days putting on private shows for our owners. My eyes widened and a smile graced my face. Now, what kind of show should I perform first? I know. I sat down with my legs crossed and looked up at my new friend as he prepared to put on his first show. His story was the first thing that I look back on today that strikes me as the first warning sign. His story was a supernatural thriller tale about a man who was pulled through a mirror into an alternate universe by another version of himself who was on death row and switched places with him. It was a little dark for me at the time, but it didn't bother me too much. In fact, I enjoyed it. Now that I'm an adult, horror is one of my favorite genres, and I suppose that interest was planted long ago. I thanked Jeremy for the story, and I returned to bed. As I got comfortable, I saw that the puppet was still outside. Are you going to come back inside? I asked. No, he said. I had a puzzled look on my face, and he could see that. Why not? I questioned. I have to stand watch and make sure no monsters sneak into your room. Monsters are everywhere, you know, my puppet explained. They are? A chill of fear ran down through my spine. Well, of course they are, Kevin. They're horrible, ugly beasts that prey on children in the night and drag them to a world of everlasting nightmares. My eyes were wide and I was trembling. I shook in my bed, holding my blanket to my nose. Oh, don't be scared, Kevin, reassured the puppet. That's one of the reasons I'm here, to protect you. Don't you worry one bit. If a monster shows up, I'll take care of it. I'll send it back down to the depths, and it will never bother you again. You promise? I quivered. He raised a felt hand to his head and saluted me. You have my word as your puppet protector. Sleep was hard to find that night, but I eventually was able to drift off. That morning, I woke up to see my puppet now nestled with me in my bed. I sat up and shut off the alarm. I yawned and stretched my arms before looking down at the felt figure on my bed. I picked him up and examined him thoroughly. I saw no signs of anything amiss or unnatural. Was it a dream? I asked myself. I honestly didn't know. I was 8 at the time, and kids that age don't really have the best grasp of reality. But I had never seen anything so natural in my young life, so that opened it up to the possibility of it being a dream to me. But I honestly didn't know for sure. When I told my parents what happened that night, they dismissed it as a dream, and I decided they were probably right. I didn't tell them the specifics of the rather dark themes the puppet had spoken of, which, looking back, I do regret. I went off to school, and my day went the way it usually did, aside from a small amount of drowsiness on my part. When school was over, I came home, did my homework, watched TV, played, and did all the stuff I normally did, until it was time for dinner and bed. That night, my mom tucked me in, and I went to sleep, once again holding my new puppet. That night, I woke up hearing a distinctive tss right in my ear. I jolted up, and my eyes instantly locked with the black button eyes of my puppet Jeremy, who was once again positioned outside the bedroom window. He waved to me. This time I pinched myself and slapped my face a few times. It felt so real, but I had to make sure. I felt awake. I had a sense of consciousness that you don't usually have when you dream, but dreams can be deceptively vivid. Feeling the sharp pinch I gave myself, I decided that I had to be awake. So I stood up and made my way to the window.
Something the matter?
Asked Jeremy, cocking his head to the side.
Nothing.
I said, shaking my head.
It's just that I wasn't sure if this was a dream or not. When I told my parents, they said I had to be dreaming.
The puppet was completely silent when I told him that. He just stood there, staring at me. My eyes looked back into his black buttons. We stood there for an uncomfortable amount of time before he spoke again.
You shouldn't tell anyone about me, Kevin. Especially not your parents,
he explained in a calm voice.
Why not?
I asked.
The monsters,
he said. He saw the fear on my face and quickly explained.
The monsters are hiding everywhere. They could be anywhere. They hide in the shadows, in every corner of darkness, and they listen for any sign of a puppet like me. You see, we are the monster's greatest enemies. If a monster finds out I'm here, they'll try to kill me, and then there won't be anyone left to protect you.
I was scared stiff. My eyes started to water. What if they had heard what I'd said? Were they on their way here? Were they going to kill him? Were they going to drag me into the dark?
What do we do?
I yelled/whispered.
Are they gonna get us? Should we run away?
No! No! Shushed the puppet. No, we're okay for now. But you need to be more careful.
I will, I promise.
Just to be safe, it might be a good idea to get another puppet, said Jeremy.
Another puppet?
I questioned. Of course. 2 puppets are better than 1, you know. With 2 of us, the monsters wouldn't stand a chance. I hesitated for a moment.
But I just had my birthday. I don't think my parents will buy me another one so soon.
Contemplated Jeremy, putting one of his flat felt hands under his chin. Well, you'll have to buy one then.
I have to buy it?
I asked incredulously.
I don't have any money.
Didn't you get any money for your birthday?
Not a lot. I mostly got stuff.
Well, you're just gonna have to get one. I don't know if I can protect you alone. Not if the monsters know I'm here.
Well, how do I get one without any money?
Take one, said my puppet, leaning closer in. My eyes widened.
You want me to steal?
I couldn't believe he would ask that of me. You want to be safe, don't you? He asked.
Well, yes, but I don't want to steal. It's wrong. And the priest at our church says stealing will get you sent to hell. It's not wrong if you have a good reason, assured Jeremy. Besides, there is no God or hell, he told me. What? I exclaimed a little too loud. The puppet shushed me. What do you mean there's no God? There has to be one. Kevin, I'm a magic puppet. If anyone would know the truth about this sort of thing, it's me. You have brought me to life as this puppet, but I've lived a long time inhabiting many puppets over the years, and I can tell you, there is no God, no devil, and no hell, because I've seen what's really out there. What's really out there? They asked, a part of my heart dying inside my chest. The monsters. They are real. The land of darkness they take people to is real, but it's not hell. They're the bad things. But there are good things too, like me, and other puppets like me. You see, we're brought to life by magic, which makes up the very fabric of the earth itself. And it's magic that protects good little boys like you. It's the magic that fights back against the forces of the monsters and the darkness. But the magic is weakening, Kevin. It's getting weaker because people stop believing in it. It was nearly destroyed by your kind hundreds of years ago. But it's still hanging on. That's why I need another puppet. The monsters are getting stronger, and I can't protect you all on my own. Do you understand? I nodded my head while my mind was in shock. I was just told a very terrifying truth, or what I thought was the truth at the time. The world around me was now put into a terrifying light. The monsters, they were all around me, waiting to get me. If I wanted to stay safe, I needed to do what Jeremy said. Okay, I relented. I'll find a way to get another tomorrow, I promised. That's a smart decision, assured Jeremy. Now, how about we do something to take your mind off everything? How about another story? He offered. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear one, but I nodded my head and sat down. That night, Jeremy told me a story. He told me a story about a man who was abducted by aliens. The aliens experimented on him, infected him with a hunger. When he returned home, he had a constantly growing hunger that couldn't be satisfied. He kept eating and eating until there was no food left in his apartment. Eventually, his hunger grew so strong that he started to eat live animals, then people. The story ended with the man wandering the earth alone, constantly trying to feed a hunger that he could never satisfy. Maybe I would have liked that story, but with what Jeremy told me that night, a horror story didn't settle well with me, especially at the dead of night. I didn't sleep well that night. I don't think I got to sleep till around 4 o'clock in the morning. The entire time that puppet watched me, my reflection never leaving the gleaming black button eyes. The puppet was starting to scare me, but it wasn't him per se, it was the things he told me about. But I truly believed he only wanted to protect me. That morning my alarm rang, but it didn't do the job of getting me out of bed. For that task, my father came in and had to wake me up himself. He jostled me awake. I labored to get my eyes open, and my dad took notice of my extremely tired state. "It's time for school, bud," he told me. "Did you get any sleep last night?" "A little," I muttered. Downstairs, my breakfast lied prepared on the table. I sat down and nibbled at the food, but my tiredness was preventing me from truly eating. My parents took notice. "Kevin, if you don't eat your breakfast, you'll be hungry during school," advised my mother. "'Kay," I muttered, slightly picking up my pace. "You didn't get a very good sleep last night," explained my dad. "Why not?" my mother asked me. "The monsters are hiding everywhere. They could be anywhere." Jeremy's words rang in my head. It had almost seemed like he was speaking them right into my ear. I told my parents I just had a nightmare.
That was enough for them, though they wondered why I hadn't gone to them when I woke up from it. I told them I was too old to sleep in my parents' bed anymore. That was the end of the conversation. The school day passed by with me barely keeping my eyes open. I didn't finish my breakfast, so I felt hunger pains for about an hour until lunch. Normally, I'd eat with my friends, but that day I sat alone. I was too tired and too lost in my own thoughts. I think my friends could tell I needed space because no one bothered me. During our recess breaks, I napped on the bench. It wasn't substantial, but it helped. School ended and the bus came around. My parents worked during this time, so I usually took the bus home. When we arrived at my house, I stood on the doorstep and watched the bus leave. When it did, I turned and made my way towards town, which was about a 10-minute walk away. I had an hour until my mom got home, 2 until my dad. I crossed into town and made my way for an old toy store. It was the kind that you'd find near the beach or in a far-off vacation town. The kind of store that sold kites, boogie boards, old board games, and, most importantly for me, puppets. I didn't want to steal, but my life was on the line. I had to do it. Adrenaline woke my tired mind as I walked into the store. I needed to be fully aware. If I got caught, my parents would be called. I'd get in trouble, yeah, but more importantly, it could ruin the plan, and then the monsters would be able to get me much easier. A bell rang, alerting the store to my presence. The owner welcomed me with a nod, but didn't address me. The store had a good half-dozen people in it, which was good for me. I wouldn't be the primary focus of attention. I pretended to browse for about 5 minutes before I made my way over to the puppets. There was an array of small hand puppets on a sort of coat rack type thing. I casually looked up to see if anyone was watching me. The owner was looking in my direction. I picked up a puppet and examined it. It was a female puppet with a purple dress and brown hair. I pretended to play with it while waiting for the right moment. In my peripheral vision, I saw a customer walk up to the desk to get the owner's attention. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I quickly put the puppet in my backpack. Once done, I pretended to browse for another few minutes before making my way out the door. Looking back, it was an incredibly thought-out process for a second grader. I made my way back home without a hitch. I walked into my room and placed the puppet on my bed. I then picked up Jeremy and showed him the new addition. "Jeremy, I got another puppet! Jeremy, I did it! I got another puppet!" He didn't answer. He just sat there lifelessly. "Jeremy, why aren't you talking?" I asked. I shook him, not understanding why he wasn't alive. But then I remembered that he only seemed to come alive at night. Maybe he couldn't do anything during the day. It made enough sense to me, so I sat him down and picked up my new puppet. I put it in my pillowcase, hoping no one would find it. Luckily, my bed was made so I didn't anticipate my parents poking and prodding at my bed. I crashed in my bed and didn't wake up until I felt myself being nudged. I woke to see my dad, looking at me with a concerned expression. "Tired, huh?" he asked. I nodded. "Did you get your homework done?" I shook my head no. "Well, it's time for dinner. Come on, let's eat. Then you can do your homework and go back to bed." I got out of my bed and followed my dad to the dining room. The family sat down and we all ate a dinner of chicken and asparagus. "Do you want to sleep with us tonight?" asked my mother. I thought about it. Surely Jeremy could watch the 3 of us together, right? I was still young enough to be accompanied to bed by a toy, but there was the one I had stolen today. They'd ask questions about it. Deciding it was a bad idea, I shook my head. "That's okay," I told my parents. "Well, all right, but try to get some sleep," conceded my mom. "Okay," I replied. We finished dinner and I went to do my homework. I managed to get everything done by bedtime. I then went to take a bath and brush my teeth. I then went to my room and got in my bed. My mom tucked me in and told me to get a good night's sleep this time. I agreed and she turned off the light, leaving me in darkness except for the glow of the pale moonlight. But that night, I didn't plan on going to sleep. I reached into my pillowcase and pulled out the new puppet. I got up and picked up Jeremy and placed both puppets on the floor. I then sat down in front of them and waited for them to come to life. I waited. Nothing happened. I waited some more, but still, they didn't come to life. I waited until my eyelids got so heavy that I couldn't keep them open anymore. I ended up falling asleep right there on the floor. I slept a dreamless sleep until I was woken by a scratching noise. I woke up slowly and hefted myself up. I looked up and saw the two puppets behind the windowsills. At that moment I saw them. They had jolted to that position like they only had a few seconds to position themselves. "You did good, Kevin," praised Jeremy. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and stood up.
Hello, Kevin,
Greeted the female puppet. "Hi," I replied, walking towards the two. "I think you should give her a name," suggested Jeremy.
Ooh, I would love a name,
Exclaimed the new puppet. Her voice sounded weird, like an effeminate male voice, but with a bit too high of a pitch. Or perhaps a very female voice with just a hint of masculinity. I couldn't be sure. Your name is..." I was sapped of creative juices. Not that it mattered, though, as the name I gave Jeremy was hardly one of creative genius. "Call you Miss Plum," I stated, focusing on the color of her clothing.
Miss Plum.
Repeated the new puppet.
I like it.
She said. "It's very nice," complimented Jeremy.
So, am I safe now?
I asked.
Will you be able to fight off the monsters?
The two felt puppets looked at each other. "I'm afraid not," said Jeremy, looking back to me.
What?
I asked.
But I did what you said. You said with the two of you I'd be safe.
I exclaimed a little too loudly. "I thought two would be enough, but I was wrong," snapped Jeremy. I flinched a little. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," he apologized quickly. "But the monsters know we are here, and they are on their way. They want to kill us and drag you to the realm of nightmares," he explained. My eyes widened in fear. "But there is hope. You see, we can take you to the paradise from which we were born. In this place, you will live in a land where your every dream comes true. You will be young forever, and there will always be someone to play with. Not many kids get to go there. This is the closest thing to heaven in all of existence."
How do we get there?
I asked. A place of eternal joy they could take me to right now sounded too good to be true. It was too good to be true. I started to feel apprehensive. A feeling of unease that I should have felt much earlier, but it finally started taking hold of me. I started thinking about everything, and questions formed in my head. "All you need to do is take our hands and agree to come with us," explained Jeremy. He held out a felt hand, waiting for me to take it.
Why do you only come alive at night?
I asked. "That's when the magic is strongest," explained Jeremy. His response came too quick. It sounded rehearsed.
Can we take my parents with us?
I asked. "No, only children can come to this place." My parents. They were the people I trusted most in this world. Did I really trust these puppets more than them? And what would happen when the monsters came? I thought on everything. For a puppet that was supposed to protect me and make me feel safe, Jeremy had been a consistent source of fear and anxiety for me. His stories were dark, too dark for an 8-year-old. He told me to steal. He told me God wasn't real, and that the world was full of monsters that wanted to drag me to a horrible place. He didn't want my parents to know about him. He said it was dangerous, that the monsters were everywhere, and that they would hear me if I spoke about him. But what was stopping them from hearing us talk right now? The things he told me had inconsistencies. He said he could protect me, but then he said he needed help. His explanations to my questions felt planned and rehearsed. I now felt that I couldn't trust Jeremy or Miss Plum. There was something very wrong with the two of them. And just then, a question formed in my head, one I should have asked before.
Why do you only tell me scary stories?
I asked. If he really was good, he wouldn't be telling me such scary stories at my young age. "Those weren't stories," said Jeremy. "Those actually happened. It was the work of the monsters.
The monsters dragged the poor man into the mirror. It was the monsters who turned the other man into a ravenous cannibal.
That was it. That was how I knew everything Jeremy had told me was a lie.
I thought you said that was a person from another universe, and aliens, I questioned. Kevin, we don't have time for this, explained Miss Plum. That's right. You need to come with us now, before it's too late, instructed Jeremy.
I now knew fully that if I took the puppet's hand, I would go someplace I did not want to go. There was one final question I had. One last thing I needed to know. Why are you always on the other side of the window? I asked. Before they could answer, the door to my room opened. I turned to see my mother. Kevin, what are you... She stopped in her tracks when she saw the two puppets moving on the other side of the window. I quickly turned my head to look at them. A half-second after I registered them in my sight, the two puppets disappeared under the window. My mother screamed and quickly rushed to the window, instructing me to stay back. After looking for a few seconds, she picked me up and carried me to her and my dad's room, where she quickly woke up my father. He sleepily asked what was wrong, and my mom told him what she had seen. He got up quickly, wide awake. He asked my mom to cover my eyes, which she did. When my vision was unshielded, my dad had a pistol in his hand. He told my mom to call the police, while he went outside to check for the intruders. A few minutes later, as my mom was on the phone, my dad returned. He told my mom to tell the police it was a false alarm. So far, she had only reported on a possible intruder. When she asked why, he told her to hang up and come outside. She did as was instructed, and I followed him, but not before telling me to go back to my room. I did as I was told. When I heard my parents talking outside, I walked to the window and I looked down. I saw my parents talking, my dad holding the two puppets, but what I saw next to them was what sent a shock through my body and a chill through my blood. In the ground were two small holes, two perfect circles, no more than 6 inches in diameter, dug into the ground so deep that I couldn't see how far they went. They looked just wide enough to each fit an arm. I never slept with my window open again. Ever. Not even now in my adult life. Even when my room is hot and humid. I always keep the window shut and locked. My love of puppets decreased that day. I told my parents everything that the puppets had told me. I decided not to call the police for 2 reasons. The first was that when my mom looked over the edge of my window, she saw no ladder or any sign that anyone had been there. The puppets were in the window one moment and on the ground the next. The second reason was the holes. They led nowhere but down into the darkness. My father lowered a tape measure into each hole, but they were so deep that he ran out of tape. My parents knew there was something unnatural about the situation. They weren't as close-minded as some others might be. I too knew that there was something that couldn't be explained easily. We went back to the toy store and returned the puppet I'd taken, and my mother had come up with a story to explain it to the owner. We moved within a few months and never came back to that town. My parents thought whatever it was that was talking to me lived in that area, but I'm not so sure. I don't think it was confined to that one spot, and I don't think I was its only target. I told you I used to love puppets. It's not that I hate them, or that they scare me now. I'm just less fond of them now. No, I'm not scared of puppets. The puppets were just objects being used to manipulate me. No. What I'm scared of is whatever is living under the ground and weaving false promises.